Hello everyone, investment scams rampant. Please vigilant and discerning. Do not trust information from unknown sources. Please make sure to recognize 2 official Capital Securities community, Facebook, Capital Securities, YouTube, Capital Wealth Insights.
Hello everyone, welcome to Ching-Yi Good Night. Today is Wednesday, February 25th. I'm analyst Jing Jita. During class, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for us. If you have any investment questions, feel free to leave a comment. If there's anything you don't remember from today, I'll be happy to go over it again in tomorrow's class. And of course, as usual, I'll also be answering questions from students that were asked yesterday. All right, good evening, everyone. Today, the entire market's focus is definitely on NVIDIA's earnings report, which will be released early tomorrow morning. NVIDIA's earnings are absolutely crucial. They impact the entire AI sector, including everything from the upstream and downstream supply chain, chip development, to packaging and testing. So, what should we pay attention to when NVIDIA's earnings come out early tomorrow? In today's LAND program, I've previewed and tracked all these points for everyone. All right, everyone, good evening. I see Meidaizi and Hu Junjun online. Good evening to you both. Also, good evening to Yulun Yi and to those in the Philippines. Good evening as well. Hello, Kipao Shui and Franklin, and hello, Mr. Lee from Taichung. Good to see you, Mr. Lee from Taichung. Hello, Melissa, and good evening to all the staff as well. Okay, now that I've greeted everyone, today is Wednesday. Finally, it's Wednesday. We'll have another live stream tomorrow, and then everyone will run into the Taiwan stock market being closed, so we'll start our break. With the 228 holiday, we'll have 3 days off in a row. Just remember, it's a 3-day break. I want to remind everyone again, anyway, it's 3 days off. So go out and take a walk, because after all, as we always say, it still counts as the new year until the Lantern Festival. Before the Lantern Festival, on the 15th day of the first lunar month, it's still considered the new year. So during this February 28th holiday, if you have time, you can go out and see the cherry blossoms, since it's cherry blossom season right now. Anyway, no matter what, hey, I love Jolie. Hello, good evening to everyone at 250. Now let's look at today's investment highlights. There are 2 main points. First, Trump has delivered his so-called State of the Union address today, which is kind of like a performance review of his administration. So what are the highlights of this State of the Union? From the address, we can see what Trump and Fox are focusing on, whether it's inflation, the economy, the stock market, or geopolitical risks like the Iran negotiations. We'll go over all this information in a bit after you see the key points from the State of the Union. You'll then understand where Trump is likely to put his focus before this year's midterm elections in the second half of the year. As long as you keep an eye on these focal points, you'll pretty much know whether the stock market is more likely to go up or down. Good evening to everyone having sparkling water. Good evening. Now, moving on to the other topic, geopolitical risks, specifically the turning point in the Russia-Ukraine situation. It's possible that things won't start to clear up until April. Why do I mention April? I'll explain in a bit. There's a turning point for the EU regarding sanctions on Russia, and it might not be implemented until April. Now, on the industry side, as I mentioned at the beginning, NVIDIA's earnings report is about to be released early this morning. You need to pay special attention to what information to watch for in NVIDIA's earnings. And since we're talking about NVIDIA, it's worth looking into its biggest competitor, AMD. AMD has started making some moves, especially in terms of equity. They're changing their investment approach. This time, the partner for the equity swap isn't OpenAI, it's Meta. So in this stock swap process, does it actually help AMD? Does AMD have a real chance to catch up with NVIDIA? Tonight, we'll be discussing these related topics in detail. All right, good evening. Oh, that's Linda. Hi, Linda. GV, is that you? Hello, you're welcome. I hope our information is helpful to all of you. Software stocks keep dropping. It's earnings season. Yeah, it's pretty rough. Speaking of software stocks, I'll add a bit more for everyone in a moment, because just yesterday a student happened to ask, okay, so what was it? There were 2 questions. The first one was, I think a couple of days ago, someone named Flower, right? Flower, if you're watching online, asked whether it's possible to sell Lit, that company. The other one was from Ludin, who asked about whether it's a good idea to invest in Tesla and Plenty. So let me briefly talk about this, including Lit, that company, which we actually analyzed for everyone a while back. Their main business is in related fields like photo detectors, optical communications, and also things like fiber optics, lasers, and various optical components and devices. Recently, this area has become pretty popular and in demand, especially because the latest chips from NVIDIA, high-end AI hardware, and even disk drives are all starting to use these technologies. It's not just about using copper wires for transmission anymore, because copper wire transmission is getting slower and can't keep up with the pace of AI development. So what might be used in the future? Besides traditional methods, they're looking at photonic communication. That's why things like fiber optics, optical communications, lasers, and so on are going to be in higher and higher demand. Light in the US mainly focuses on these products. For example, things like CPUs and CPOs, what we call silicon photonics, are a big part of this. Recently, the concept of silicon photonics has really taken off in Taiwan, with stocks like Huasheng Guang and Brolaway skyrocketing. Companies like Shangquan and Shunsin KY are also part of this trend, so you might want to keep an eye on them. Of course, LIT has been climbing steadily lately with almost no significant pullbacks, so if you really want to buy it, just remember to stick to very short-term trades because it's been shooting up at almost a 70-degree angle. If you want to get in, you need to have a strong heart. When it touches the 5-day moving average on the K-line chart, when it hits the 5-day moving average, you can buy a little and then buy a bit more each time it touches the 5-day moving average. But if it falls below the 10-day moving average, you consider trimming your position after its sharp rally. Mind the risks of buying high, though fundamentals remain solid. February 3rd earnings beat expectations, driven by AI themes and a positive trend. Now, as for the company Plenty, you'll want to keep an eye on it. Someone asked about Plenty, and if you look at its stock price, you'll see that since last August up to now, the upward trend line has already been broken. It's already broken down. Plus, both the 20-day and 50-day moving averages are now acting as resistance overhead. So in the short term, for companies like Plenty, which are somewhat related to AI and big data, people start to wonder if one day even big data itself might get replaced by AI. Because of that, there are all sorts of rumors and speculation swirling around. So for big data software companies like Plenty, you need to pay a bit more attention. In the short term, the moving average for this month is still acting as a resistance overhead. As long as this trend line, the blue dotted line, haven't been reclaimed, it's better to take a more conservative approach. You can see that the index keeps hitting new highs, and the US stock market keeps reaching new highs, but its performance is completely different and heading in the opposite direction. So that's a simple answer regarding flour in the sector. As for the question about marinated eggs, there were related questions yesterday and the day before. So aside from answering that, let's take a look at what the officials have been saying, which is really important. Regarding the officials, the March interest rate decision meeting is about to be held, probably around March 8th or 9th. As this meeting approaches, we're seeing that many officials are still split between dovish and hawkish stances, with ongoing disagreements between the two sides. So, under this framework of disagreement, I think the March interest rate decision will probably remain unchanged. This includes comments from people like Goolsbee and Collins. Neither of them are voting members this year, but we should still take their remarks into consideration. Goolsbee said that before there is more evidence showing that inflation is coming down, it's not appropriate to cut rates. However, he also said that he remains optimistic about the possibility of further rate cuts this year. So it's kind of strange. He's basically saying, if inflation goes down, great, but if it doesn't, then there's no need to cut rates. But when he talks about further rate cuts this year, he's still optimistic. In other words, he thinks there's a chance inflation will go down this year, because only if inflation drops will there be an opportunity to cut rates. So reading between the lines, what he's really saying is that people shouldn't assume inflation is stuck at its current level. Maybe in the second half of this year, there's a chance inflation will go down. If it does, of course that would make rate cuts more favorable. Okay, that's the position I've identified. Another committee member, Collins, just told everyone that it's possible to keep the current interest rates unchanged for a while. Why? Because, as he mentioned, just a few days ago, didn't the Supreme Court rule last week that Trump's tariffs were invalid? He said that this ruling on tariffs being invalid will create a lot of short-term economic uncertainty. And of course, that's because some countries are saying, since you ruled the tariffs invalid, you need to refund the taxes to us. Some companies are now rising up one after another, demanding that the federal government quickly return all the emergency tax withholdings from before. So this will cause the whole economic situation to keep heating up. And in addition, he mentioned something else. I think this is a phenomenon not just in the US, but all over the world. He said, when companies initially passed on the so-called tariff cost to consumers or slightly raise their prices, they usually don't lower those prices back down just because the tariffs are now invalid. That almost never happens. So this could make inflation even more stubborn. Think back a year or two. Taiwan had the same situation with that big egg shortage, remember? Prices for a single egg jumped from $3 or $5 up to $10. And you couldn't even find them in supermarkets because they were so scarce. When the egg shortage hit, did you notice how the price just kept climbing? $3, $5, all the way up to $15 for a single egg. Even if you went to a breakfast shop to get a fried egg, it used to be $5 for an extra egg, but now it's gone up to $15. But did you notice, when eggs finally became plentiful again and were back on the market, did the price ever really go back down to $3 or $5? No, it didn't. It just never goes back down. Isn't that strange? Even though there's plenty of supply and both wholesalers and retailers have lowered their prices, why is it that when they sell to consumers, the price still stays high? It never drops back from $15 to $3. Why? That's just how business people are. That's their nature. If they can raise prices, they're not going to lower them again. If I can raise prices, I'm just not going to lower them. Why? Because I'll make more money that way. This is how it is all over the world. Seriously, everywhere. Once prices go up, even if the upstream costs or raw material prices drop, they still won't lower the price because they want to make more profit. It reminds me, recently, every time I work the night shift, I always go to the same place. You could call it a bento shop to buy, a chicken leg to put on chicken rice. I pretty much eat the same thing every day. And over these past 2 years, through our live streams, I've watched their prices. It started out with a bento box costing $100, and just in these past 2 years, it went from $100 to $105, then later up to $110, and recently, how much is it now? Recently, it's gone up to $120. It's already gone up by 20%. Yeah, it's already increased by 20%. In just these 2 short years, it's gone up by 20%. And then I saw their notice saying that starting next week, on March 1st, they're going to raise the price again by another $5 to $10. So that means a chicken-like bento, maybe next week when I buy it, a bento can cost $130 now, making it harder to buy. It tastes good, but the price keeps rising while salaries stay flat. When it jumps from $100 to $130, will prices ever drop if chicken costs go down? If the price of low-carb options drops, or if the price of white rice goes down, will it go back down from $130 to the $100 it was 2 years ago? That's just not possible. It's impossible. This kind of price stickiness keeps happening all over the world. So, as for Tenley and Collins, I think some are a bit more optimistic and expect rate cuts, while others just say that inflation will probably remain sticky. So, in March this year, interest rates should still remain unchanged. Oh, and hello to Bananas, Yang and Six. Good evening to you all. Also, about Trump. As for Trump's State of the Union address, everyone should pay a bit of attention, because from the State of the Union, you can really get a sense of what Trump is actually thinking, even though throughout his entire hour and 48-minute long State of the Union speech, which, by the way, about 80% of the time we were just listening to him brag about his achievements, since it's basically a political showcase, a presentation of his accomplishments, he ended up speaking for 1 hour and 48 minutes, which actually set a record for the longest speech by a US president in history, almost 2 hours long. There's a lot, and honestly, I think Trump is quite a showman. He must really enjoy talking nonstop. For example, every time I do a live stream in our group, once we start talking, we don't even take a break, right? We don't even stop for water, we just keep talking and talking for an hour straight. So one of these days, if we end up talking for 2 hours, well, that's just how it goes. So analyzing it should be doable too. That's why I believe Trump is also someone who talks a lot, just like me. He loves to go on and on. So he delivered a State of the Union address that lasted an hour and 48 minutes. In it, he said things like, America's golden age has arrived, and he emphasized something important. This is the key point, the first one. He noted the stock market is hitting new highs, with the Dow topping 50,000. This shows he views the market as a key political win and remains bullish. If stocks rise, he feels reassured, seeing it as his accomplishment. Remember, during his term, especially these next 3 years, market fluctuations will be critical. Any slight disturbance, he will rush to save the stock market, so that's the first key point. Second, Venezuela has received more than 80 million barrels of crude oil, and inflation has dropped sharply. So what does that mean? He doesn't want oil prices to go up. He doesn't want oil prices to rise, because if oil prices go up too much, inflation won't come down. If inflation doesn't come down, the Federal Reserve will have a hard time cutting interest rates. So he'll do everything he can to bring oil prices down. What does that mean? In addition to bringing in a lot of crude oil from other sources, there's also the possibility that negotiations with Iran will be pushed as much as possible toward a diplomatic solution. Because if any of these issues aren't handled well, and international oil prices, whether it's US oil or Brent crude, shoot up, then inflation will spike. And if that inflation becomes sticky and can't come back down, the Federal Reserve will lose even more ground and credibility when it comes to cutting interest rates. Trump will likely keep oil prices low by steering Iran negotiations positively to avoid contradictions. He also supports the big Saudi tax cut bill. Plus, on the IEEP tariffs, illegal or not, he's disappointed. But don't overthink it. Whether he's upset or not, he'll find other ways to impose them. Like we said, if Plan A fails, he'll switch to Plan B. Maybe rates drop from 16 to 14%. That's the point. What? He says houses are for living, not for companies to own. He wants to stop institutional speculation, so lower price pressure might help regular people buy homes. That's the idea, but it'll be tough short term. Next, a key point for the industry. He said that the development of AI brings a lot of pressure on energy resources because there's a shortage of electricity. Running AI requires a huge amount of power, a lot of energy. So he said AI will create a lot of pressure on energy supply. He mentioned that these AI companies, whether it's CSP operators or AI platforms, like the ones I just mentioned, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Google, it's all the same. If you're short on electricity, you need to build your own power plants to meet your company's energy needs. You can't cause regular people's electricity bills to skyrocket. What does that mean? It means that, going forward, stocks related to electricity usage will be relevant. These are all the current hot topics. For example, there's nuclear power generation, solar power, wind power, and natural gas power. Anything related to power generation, especially nuclear power, will be in focus. The petrochemical industry will also be more Trump-oriented. These are the industries that will be prioritized for development, and they'll also be the kinds of companies others want to partner with. For example, there are some nuclear energy concept stocks like UUUU, UEC, and then some small modular nuclear plants like SNR, Oklo, or some power companies like GE, VCEG, and VST. There are a lot of them, a whole bunch. Back around the middle of last year, there was a wave of speculation that pushed these stocks up. I remember some stocks like UUU and UEC went up 4 or 5 times. That was last year, during that mid-year rally. So just keep an eye on them going forward, because Trump has mentioned these companies by name again. Because energy is closely tied to the development of AI, it's extremely, extremely important. This is also one of the focal points of his State of the Union address this time. In addition, when it comes to power risks, he mentioned that in the past year of his term, he ended 8 wars, and he will continue negotiations with Iran and Ukraine. So looking at all these key points together, we can see them very clearly. First, Trump focuses on the economy and the stock market. He doesn't want inflation to go down. He wants geopolitical risks to cool off. Next, he's supportive of AI development, but along with the growth of AI, the demand for electricity, the development of semiconductors, and the need for energy are also things he pays close attention to. Inflation is also something he wants to keep in check. So as long as you grasp these points, you'll know that in the next 3 years, whenever there are developments related to the items I just mentioned, then you'll have a sense of which direction Trump is leaning toward. Okay, if you can grasp this, you'll know that when inflation suddenly spikes, he'll find ways to suppress it. When there's not enough crude oil, he'll find ways to bring more oil in. What about when there's not enough electricity? When there's not enough electricity for AI, who will he turn to? He'll look for companies that develop power sources to work with the government, even including rare earth mining companies and other mineral companies. These will also become bargaining chips in future trade wars, in terms of how resources are allocated. He'll also work hard to collaborate with these companies. So if you understand this, basically for the next 3 years or so, the main opportunities and projects will be found in this area. If you understand these projects, I think there really won't be any major issues for the next 3 years. So remember, even though he spent almost 2 hours talking and most of the domestic capital was just singing his praises, from all that praise, we can actually see what Trump's real intentions are. Labor sector employment is 4.04%, with the 3.09 midpoint rate unchanged. 2 rate cuts are still expected. The US dollar index fluctuates weekly, with the 200-day moving average a strong resistance, down 0.1% today. I'll add more on power supply risks shortly. It's hard to stay awake once you sit down. Just like what Luis said about this, actually, I've noticed that this is a common situation for a lot of older people. You'll find that when you're standing, like us, you'll keep talking, but once you sit down, you just keep talking and talking. Or like today, if we're sitting on the couch, it's easy to just pass the time. I've reached that age too, sitting on the couch, watching TV or scrolling on my phone, and after a while, you just feel really tired. But when you actually go to bed and lie down to sleep, you end up tossing and turning and can't necessarily fall asleep. Or maybe you just wake up earlier than before. These are symptoms that come with getting older, and of course, that includes Trump as well. How old is he? 78, 79? That's pretty impressive. Okay, so who was it? Kaiser asked about sharing some thoughts on Sandy and Micron. SanDisk has recently gone up a lot and then pulled back. I remember there was some news yesterday, something about an investment firm wanting to short it. Was it Zhenghui Investment, or which firm was it that wanted to short it because they thought SanDisk had gone up too much? What about Micron? It has the HBM story, and with the ongoing development of AI, Micron's HBM3, HBM3E, and HBM4 are all being actively developed. So in terms of Micron's strength, let's put it this way. I think Micron's product strength gives it a stronger position than SanDisk. So if you're really comparing these two stocks, honestly, in terms of stability, SanDisk is more likely to be overbought and has bigger price swings with a higher beta. But for Micron, it has more solid fundamentals to support it because globally, the top three players in high bandwidth memory are Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix, who together dominate the market. So if you want to buy, just go with these three companies. As for these two companies, I think their current trend is still bullish, but if you look at the fundamentals in terms of stability, I think Micron is slightly better, just a bit better. Okay, that answers the question from earlier. Now let's move on and take a look at geopolitical risks. The EU, well, there are reports now that the US is expected to lower, in the next few weeks they say, the scope of the 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. There are currently 400 items on the list, and they say it might be reduced in the future. And in addition, besides what we talked about yesterday, how FedEx filed a lawsuit demanding that all the tariffs previously imposed be refunded, and that they're taking this to the US Court of International Trade, today, the French cosmetics giant L'Oreal and the British home appliance company Dyson, yes, the famous British Dyson, companies like Bausch and Lomb have also filed lawsuits seeking refunds for Trump-era tariffs. Will they actually get the money back? As I've noted recently, it's hard to say if they'll be paid out, given the enormous impact. Like we discussed, if tariffs are refunded, what happens next? If new ones are added later, do you pay them back again? This constant back and forth is exhausting for everyone. In the end, how much is actually returned? Any refund will likely be a fraction of the total. If Trump imposes another 15% tariff, it just gets charged again. These lawsuits will just lead to endless negotiations that drag on forever. We want to negotiate, and as for the diplomatic side of things, the White House reiterated that the top priority between the US and Iran is still to resolve things through diplomacy. They also said that if necessary, they'll still take action. Basically, it's the same old story, nothing different from before. Iran also hopes to reach an agreement with the US. In the end, I think either the US will just launch a small-scale attack on Iran, maybe targeting its nuclear facilities. Besides small-scale attacks on some military facilities, they might also strike at Iran's flanks, including places like Lebanon or even Syria. As for Yemen, maybe they'll target the Houthis or other military forces there. Basically, they might carry out some attacks like that to intimidate Iran. Okay, so that's the gray swan scenario. As for this black swan, I still think there are some uncertainties. It's just that whether it will suddenly escalate out of control is another question. Right now, it doesn't look like there's a big chance of things spiraling, but minor skirmishes might be unavoidable. They might not be able to avoid that. Now, as for why I just mentioned the Russia-Ukraine war, any turning point might wait until April. Why? Because they mentioned a three-way meeting on the 26th and 27th. I doubt anything substantial will result. If Russia, Ukraine, and the US wanted to talk, they would have done it 4 years ago. It wouldn't have dragged on until now, entering the 5th year. The war in Ukraine has already lasted a full 4 years, February 24th, right? That's today. Today is the 25th, so it's already heading into the 5th year. So they've been fighting for a really, really long time. That's why I think the chances of them reaching an agreement and a complete ceasefire during the talks on the 26th or 27th are pretty slim. I think it's more likely that we'll have to wait until April to see how things develop. Why April? Because the EU wants to impose new sanctions on Russia, but these sanctions often get blocked by Hungary's prime minister. So what about Hungary? If their parliamentary elections are held around mid-April, he said they're expected to be on April 15th, then 3 days after the election, once everything settles down and it's clear which party will be in power, only then will they consider whether or not to move forward on April 15th. They're proposing new sanctions against Russia. What kind of sanctions? They might permanently ban imports of Russian crude oil. So will this actually happen? Honestly, I think we'll have to wait until mid-April to see. The negotiations at the end of February didn't really have any major points, so let's just wait until mid-April and see if the EU's sanctions against Russia will have any effect. For now, it doesn't really look like it. It's more likely that each side will just stick to their own positions. So as for crude oil prices, right now they're just fluctuating around the 200-day moving average. Why aren't prices dropping? It's because everyone's waiting to see if there will be any breakthroughs between the US and Iran. If there's a positive development, oil prices might cool down and drop. But if the negotiations don't go well, it could trigger everyone's nerves again, and maybe crude oil prices will surge even higher. Now, if prices do surge, like I mentioned earlier in the State of the Union, actually, Trump doesn't want crude oil prices to spike. So which direction the negotiations with Iran will go, I think everyone should keep an eye on it and keep watching. All right, Jeff Lynn, good night. Jeff Lynn, good night. As for the economic data, there isn't much economic data tonight. Tomorrow, we'll briefly look at some travel data, but what's really important is NVIDIA's earnings report coming out early tomorrow morning. So let's take a look at that and give everyone a quick preview. According to the Wall Street Journal, NVIDIA might have a chance to return to the consumer PC market. I think it makes sense for them to get back into consumer PCs, especially since they invested $5 billion in Intel. After all, Intel holds about a 70% market share in CPUs for Windows PCs. Then the other major player in CPUs is AMD. So when it comes to CPUs for personal PCs, Intel is still by far the biggest manufacturer. Now that NVIDIA has invested in Intel, what is NVIDIA's main strength, where they hold up to a 90% market share? That would be GPUs, graphics processing units, which are closely tied to AI operations. Intel, on the other hand, is focused on CPUs, or central processing units. So what about the future? Is it possible for NVIDIA and Intel to team up to develop something like a GPU combined with a CPU? It's definitely possible. After all, Intel is the biggest chip supplier for PCs, and NVIDIA is the biggest supplier of GPUs. There's nothing bad about these two powerhouses joining forces. In fact, it could be highly effective. That's why the Wall Street Journal mentioned that if these two companies work together, it could happen as soon as this year. In the first half of this year, besides working with Intel, NVIDIA might also collaborate with MediaTek. Plus, Dell and Lenovo are expected to launch laptops with built-in NVIDIA chips in the first half of the year. So if these powerhouses join forces, I think it would be a big win for Intel. This kind of partnership would really benefit Intel. It's a plus for everyone involved. It benefits all parties. Intel might get a bit more help out of this since they found a rich dad in NVIDIA. So when it comes to stock prices, Intel stock might have a better chance of going up. The Commerce Department says the H200 chip isn't sold to China yet. It's hardly worth following now, with constant flip-flopping on whether it's exported, restricted, or approved for sale. Don't you find it really annoying to listen to? I'm honestly sick of hearing about it. So honestly, whether the H200 ends up being exported to China or not, I think it just doesn't matter anymore. It's not important to respond to it either. If they sell, it increases revenue. If not, it doesn't matter. NVIDIA already stated they're no longer including China in their financial reports because the impact is unpredictable. Since China's revenue is excluded now, the Commerce Department's H200 sales decision is irrelevant. China likely won't even want this next-gen chip, so they might not buy it even if it's available. Now, looking ahead, let's talk about NVIDIA's earnings report, which will be released early tomorrow morning. Since 2020, after each earnings report, on average, the stock prices got up by 2.6% 5 days after the announcement. With 13 gains and 11 losses, it's nearly a 50-50 split. So don't assume that if earnings beat expectations, the stock will rally for days. It's really just the toss-up. Half the time it goes up, half the time it goes down, but on average, the gains are close to 3%. As for the earnings reports, there have been 23 times when they met expectations and only once when they missed. So that's over 95%, an extremely high proportion. So tonight, it looks like maybe it might meet expectations again. But even if it does, don't get too optimistic and rush in. I think at this stage with AI stocks, the safer way to trade is to wait for a pullback to support or the moving average before buying. If it surges, let it go. It won't go up forever, and it won't fall forever either. You'll always have another chance to get in. Now, as for the financial report, let's take a look and give everyone a preview. First, regarding NVIDIA, according to the latest Q4 financial report, Bloomberg currently estimates revenue at $60, which is a 68% year-over-year growth. The full year estimate is $213.7 billion, which is extremely high, with an annual growth rate of nearly 64%. So just remember, $65.9 billion for the quarter and $213.7 billion for the full year, all in US dollars. The annual growth rate is over 60%. As for the next quarter, the estimate is even higher, reaching $72.7 billion with a year-over-year growth of 65%. So all of these numbers, you need to compare these estimated revenue figures. When the results are announced early tomorrow morning, pay close attention to whether they beat expectations or fall short. As for the revenue estimates, the forecast is $65.9 billion, and for the full year, it's $213.7 billion. For the next quarter, the estimated forecast is $72.7 billion. So just remember this number. As for EPS, this time the earnings report estimate is only $1.53, with the full year at $4.69, 1.53 for this quarter, 4.69 for the whole year. The estimate for the next quarter could go as high as 1.68, so remember 1.53, 1.68, and 4.69. One is for the full year, and the others are for this quarter and the next. Keep these numbers in mind and compare them a bit. If you can't sleep late tonight or early tomorrow morning, just keep an eye on whether the announced numbers match the forecast or not. If the results meet or beat expectations, there's a chance the stock price will go up. But what if they only meet expectations? You need to pay attention to the technical side because there's a chance it could break below the consolidation range we've seen over the past 4 months. From last October until now, these 4 months have basically been a sideways consolidation. As you can see from the trend, it's just been moving sideways. It's been a sideways consolidation, so what about tonight's earnings report? Actually, it's tomorrow morning's earnings report. If it meets expectations, there's a good chance that Hawaii will break out of this range, and the consolidation will end as it surges upward, starting a new upward trend. But if it falls short of expectations, could that happen? Yes, it's possible it could miss expectations. Or maybe it beats expectations, but the extent to which it beats expectations isn't as much as the market was hoping for. In that case, it might drop. If it does drop, pay attention. If it falls to around the 200-day moving average, or when it reaches the lower edge of this channel, you can look for a suitable buying opportunity. But if the drop is a direct gap down, a straight gap down that breaks below this entire platform or this trend line, then you should just observe for a bit. If it gaps down sharply, you need to stop, look, and listen. Understand what that means. If there's a gap down, you need to stop, look, and listen. But if it just drops slowly, gradually declining to the lower edge of this channel, then you can clear your position and try it out. In fact, just do some bottom fishing moves. That's enough. But if it surges up, there's no need to chase it. If it surges and you already have some in hand, then congratulations. If you don't, that's okay too. So this part of the answer is just a preview for everyone on the technical side and the earnings report side, because all the earnings for the Magnificent 7 stocks will be announced early tomorrow morning. Once everything is announced, tomorrow's update on the Magnificent 7 will be the last and most important thing, really the most crucial part. Okay, so what did Franklin say? Whether it's specifically about SN, securities fraud, blah blah, providing products, employees setting up operations, whether there was any manipulation involved, this probably needs more in-depth research to really know. Anyway, as for SN, actually what they're doing is just running some small power plants or whatever. They have new tech, but can they scale it? Right now, we don't know. But new technology means new business opportunities. Like OKO. Can their nuclear tech replace traditional plants? If so, costs will drop across the board. But new tech always brings new risks. As for whether there might be any concerns about fraud or anything like that, I think you really need to do some in-depth research. It's not something you can figure out just by looking at their financial reports or checking out news from the outside right away. So that's a brief answer to Franklin's question. Yeah. Caesar asked about managing several positions, given his bearish outlook and 2 specifically heavy ones. If your positions are too heavy, consider reducing them. Don't let any single stock take up too much of your position. As I mentioned, between SK Hynix and Micron, I think Micron is slightly better. You also noted having many Kioxia holdings. If your first floor positions are all memory stocks like Micron or SanDisk, you've likely made a killing. Just gradually take profits at highs, then rebuild positions if prices pull back to the 5 or 10-day moving averages. These are 2 distinct strategies. If your holding cost is low and you don't want to sell, then don't. Wait until it drops below the monthly or quarterly moving average before considering a midterm reduction. If the trend stays steady, just hold on. You can just stay in for now, so that's my answer to Caesar. Now, Sun Pei and Sun Pei also asked whether the English version of the commentary is done by me personally. Well, this is interesting. The English version of the live commentary does use my own image, but the voice is all generated by AI. So our English conversation skills aren't actually that amazing. Our pronunciation and everything isn't that perfect, not that impressive. So for all the English versions of the live broadcasts, for all the teachers' English versions, they're all done by AI. The AI translates our Chinese content into English, including the slides, the voice, and even the mouth movements are all turned into English, but the person's image and intonation inside are still my own. It's like taking our evening program and using AI to translate it into English. Our English isn't very impressive. Trump's State of the Union address keeps being referenced, right? You should remember its key points. This answers the audience's question and covers what I just discussed. All right, this is about NVIDIA, and where can you find the English version? Go check it out. I don't have anything to show you right now, but you can look at our official website or on our YouTube homepage. There's an English version there. In the videos section, not the live streams, but the regular videos, there are live streams, videos, and shorts, right? And there are also playlists. Under the videos tab, you'll find the English version. Okay, that's it. Oling21888 asked if the market will rise or just consolidate for the rest of the year. I haven't checked the Taiwan market. We're focusing on the US market right now. I can't pull up those charts, and that question was specifically about Taiwan. Morning teachers might have more time to answer since we focus on the US market at night. On night shifts, I can't really check Taiwan stocks or those high-priced ones lately. Good evening. Phison relates to Netflix and the Clippers memory chips. Did you guys see that meme? That meme was pretty funny. So the meme goes like this. There was a reporter, Jensen Huang, came to visit, right? And a reporter asked, hey, what do you think about collaborating with Phison? And Jensen Huang replied, as if he didn't know about Phison at all. So when that meme started circulating, everyone was like, that means Jensen Huang hasn't worked with Phison. And that day, Phison's stock price just plummeted. That's basically what happened. As for whether they're actually collaborating or not, we really don't know. Anyway, as for related memory stocks like Netlist or DDR, they surged recently. Before the Lunar New Year, Winbond, Nanya, and others shot up. When stocks rise that much, it is normal for them to pull back over the next few days. So for Phison, we wait and see. It is likely just a normal pullback after that rally. All right, as for NVIDIA's competitor, AMD, yes, AMD, also known as Supermicro. So what did AMD or Supermicro announce? They basically did the same thing, using shares to exchange for investment or acquisitions. And how did they do it? They announced a partnership with Meta. Over the next 5 years, Meta will purchase between $60 billion and $100 billion worth of AMD's latest AI chips. And it will happen in phases. If Meta keeps buying more and more, to a certain extent, they'll eventually have enough. Meta could subscribe to up to 10% of AMD shares. That's basically a strategic partnership. The first batch of the latest MI450 chips is expected to start shipping in the second half of this year. Previously, AMD also partnered with OpenAI in a similar way. Back then, it was said that as long as OpenAI met the requirements for certain 6G-related chips, then OpenAI could also acquire related AMD shares. So this time, it's the same story. It's exactly the same approach. The method is, if you buy enough of my chips, once you reach a certain threshold, I'll let you subscribe to shares in my company. Of course, the subscription price is definitely lower than the current market price. It's the subscription price, and the option to subscribe is at a lower rate. So basically, they're using shares as an incentive to secure the partnership. Of course, I think this is a win-win and definitely beneficial for AMD. Because of this, AMD's stock surged nearly 9% yesterday. Now, you might ask, does this 9% jump completely reverse AMD's current period of volatility and consolidation? Right now, it doesn't seem so. Despite a 9% rise, it's still the same. Since last fall, it's been consolidating for nearly 5 months. Its pattern is similar to NVIDIA's, just consolidating sideways. Short term, as long as this dashed blue line hasn't broken, don't worry. If it reaches the blue curve, consider buying a bit or scaling out. Look at this blue curve near the neckline. It's been touched 5 times. So it's not that it won't come back down, it's just that when it does, you need to be bold enough to buy. In the past, it's already touched it 5 times. As for the resistance above, the resistance price is more variable. It could be anywhere from 200 to 260 or even 240, all are possible. So as for resistance, I don't think it's very relevant at the moment. The resistance level isn't very meaningful, but for support, you can look at how it's touched this blue trend line 5 times in the past. You can treat this as a short-term support. As for AMD working with Meta, I can only say it's helpful for AMD, but in the long run, whether this partnership will really make a difference, that's still uncertain. Challenging Nvidia's market share or trying to compete with their massive revenue or grabbing a big piece of that pie, I think it's still very difficult in the short term. Even though AMD is working with OpenAI and Meta, I think in the short term, whether it's the stock price or the fundamentals, it's still really hard to overtake Nvidia right away. So just relying on technical analysis for trading is enough. Now, there's another company reporting earnings, and that's HP. HP's earnings report was disappointing, despite meeting Q4 expectations. Rising memory costs for DDR4 and HBM are now impacting the company. The three major memory manufacturers are all moving toward developing high-end memory like HBM. So they said that because of this situation, you can see that DDR or DDR5 prices just keep going up and up, right? So he said that the price of memory keeps rising, and with the impact of tariffs, it's expected that first quarter estimates will fall short of expectations, and even the full year profits will only reach the company's original lower end forecast. So this negative news caused HP's stock price to keep dropping, heading for new lows. In pre-market trading on the US stock market, it kept falling. I saw it drop to around $17 before the market opened. So yesterday, it dropped by 0.82. This trend is really rough. Honestly, while the US stock market keeps hitting new highs, the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq are both setting records, HP's stock price has just been falling and falling from $30, dropping again and again, almost like there's no bottom in sight. After all, there are a lot of strange external factors impacting it. But is it really because its financial reports are bad? Actually, its financials aren't bad at all, not nearly as bad as people imagine. Last year, whether it was the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, or the full year report, none of them were as bad as people thought. However, this year there might be more things affecting it, so the fourth quarter earnings were below expectations, but the outlook for the first quarter this year, as well as the full year forecast, in fact, the full year outlook for 2020 is actually worse than expected, so its stock price has kept dropping and correcting. So if you hold HP technology stocks, just pay a bit more attention, because in the short term, things still look pretty weak and sluggish. Okay. All right, someone asked, what do you think, does AI's voice still sound magnetic? It should be just as magnetic, just as magnetic. Okay, you're welcome, you're welcome. Ask for the Fison question, I'll just give you a quick answer here. Should we be too worried about short-selling institutions shorting the stock or the stock price continuing to surge? Of course, that's something to be concerned about, but I think both short-selling and long institutions are the same. Just take their reports as a reference. 020, good night, good night. Right now, the prices of personal computers are really expensive. Yeah, they're all expensive, all very high. Retail 3C products for individuals are also doing pretty badly. Yeah, I honestly don't even know anymore. Back when I used to buy DDR or when I used to build my own computers, I would buy those, probably. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, DDR4, I don't even remember how many 16G sticks I put together back then. How much did a 16G stick cost? Like 1100, 1500, 1600? I don't even know if it was 15 or 1600. I have no idea how much it costs now. Maybe it's really expensive. I haven't checked in a long time. Anyway, back then when we built our own computers, we would pick everything ourselves. We'd choose the CPU, then pick the power supply, decide which one to get, then the motherboard, and so on. And of course, when it comes to the CPU, you want to get a better one if you can so it runs programs more smoothly and doesn't lag. So usually, for RAM, 8 gigabytes just isn't enough anymore. Nowadays, you need at least 16 gigabytes or even 32 gigabytes or more. That's plenty, since running many programs really needs that much RAM. I don't even know what 16 gigs costs now. Back then, a stick of Kingston was only about 15 or 1600, but now I have no idea. As for HP and AMD's financial reports, just keep an eye on them. Finally, here is some industry news I wanted to share with you all. Let me share this with everyone. Hey, who is this? Hey, Shinshi Amaisu 1905, good evening. Hello, hello. Is this Schwan? I don't think I've really noticed the account before. Good evening, good evening. So to add a bit about the supply chain, let's do a little knowledge sharing with everyone. Google's AI development is impressive. With Gemini 3, 3.1, and the Polo version, they've done a fantastic job. Since they make their own AI chips like the SQL and TPU, their hardware is also really strong. It's fast, high performance, and runs quickly too. It doesn't even need to rely on brute force. Really impressive. So both the TPU and AI's Gemini 3.1 are getting better and better. Besides that, Google is also leading the way in quantum computer development. And then today, they're working on something else. Google is just really good at this kind of thing. The talent at Google is truly on another level. It's multiplied. Really impressive. So when he's working on something, he says right now with the development of AI, data centers really need a lot of electricity, don't they? Just like we mentioned earlier, even Trump's State of the Union talked about how important electricity is for AI, how crucial power supply is. So at Google's data center in Minnesota, he's using an innovative battery energy storage technology because you need electricity, right? Power storage is super important. You can't afford to run out of power or have a sudden outage. Besides being important, power also needs to be stored. Right now, in most popular and common situations, what do people use? They all use lithium batteries. No matter if it's lithium ion batteries, lead acid batteries, or whatever. Lithium ion, nickel cobalt, nickel manganese, and so on. There are a lot of types, but basically they all contain lithium, so lithium batteries are pretty common now. Then he said that they used an innovative technology to invent something. It's called iron-air electromagnetic energy storage technology. You probably don't know what iron-air is, right? So about this storage thing, regular lithium batteries can usually store electricity for about 4 to 8 hours. That's normal, 4 to 8 hours for lithium batteries. But he said that this iron-air battery energy storage technology can actually provide up to 100 hours of power storage. That's incredible, really impressive. So who's working on this? The company is called Forever Energy, or maybe One Energy or Four Energy. He said that this company, Energy, is developing this iron-air battery. Of course, if you have a background in chemistry, chemical engineering, or physics, you might understand it a bit better. He said that through redox reactions involving oxygen, water, and iron powder, electricity can be generated. After the electricity is used up, they use some kind of chemical reaction to remove the rest, basically reversing the resting process and then starting it over again, kind of like cycling through the resting and cleaning process repeatedly. Anyway, I'm not from a related field, so if you're interested, you can go check out more about it. Basically, this is a new technology that uses iron, air, and water with oxygen, and then, some kind of chemical reactions and all that, combining everything together to create something we don't really understand. But regardless of what exactly it produces, he says that this storage technology lasts longer than lithium batteries in terms of storage efficiency, and on top of that, its cost is much lower, maybe only 1/10 the cost of lithium batteries. Of course, it does have its drawbacks. The downside is that when it comes to quickly delivering large amounts of electricity through the grid, it's not as suitable. Lithium batteries are still stronger in that area. But I think this iron-air battery could have a promising future as well. It's also worth everyone taking a closer look at this, because after all, Google really does have a ton of talent. So it might be a good idea to keep an eye on patents related to lithium batteries or energy storage technology. In the end, I just wanted to add a bit more about related technologies. There are always new things, new science, and new tech, so it's good for everyone to keep track of them. Yesterday, I was checking out Didi, and there was the 16 gigabyte one, 5,000 for 64 gigabytes, 3 times that, 5,000 for 16 gigabytes. Wait, is 5,000 in new Taiwan dollars? Did I see that right? Is it really that expensive, or is that 16 gigabytes 5,000 just a model number? I'm not sure, I don't know. I have no idea where the prices are at now. Anyway, when I bought it before, you could get one for 1,200 to 1,500. 3 years later, it's likely tripled. US pre-market, international firms like Thai-style ones rose on earnings, jumping nearly 16%. Albemarle gained 7%, while Coinbase rose 4%. Some of this is a rebound after a steep drop. As for Coinbase, I don't have time to show you the daily chart today, but if you pull up the weekly K-line chart, you'll notice that its recent bottom has just reached the lower edge of this big triangle's convergence area, right in the low zone. Back when it was at a high, we told everyone to remember to sell. Now it's hit this area for the 3rd time in a row. According to the weekly K-line, you can go check it out yourself. Alright, on the weekly K-line level, it's already touched the bottom support area. So why did it go up 4% before the market opened today? It's because they announced that they're going to offer 5-day-a-week, 24-hour trading in the US market. That could boost their trading volume, and maybe their commission fees will increase quite a bit too. So that's why it went up 4% before the market opened. As for Oracle, it was up 2.8% pre-market, which is more of a rebound after a drop. Robinhood, which is also related to securities and trading, was up 2.26% pre-market as well. Paramount and Skydance, well, Skydance made a new proposal. Regarding their offer to Warner Brothers, the stock was up 1.9% pre-market. They raised their offer from $30 per share to $31 per share. Also, Corning. Corning, which makes glass, was also up 1.56% pre-market after making an announcement. Recently, all related companies have been surging because of AI-related demand, whether it's high-end printed circuit boards or related upstream and downstream sectors like fiberglass cloth and copper-clad laminates. They're all seeing big gains. This includes the Taiwan stock market as well. Netflix was also up 1.5% pre-market. As for companies that dropped, some had disappointing earnings reports. For example, Deco New Energy, a solar company, was down 17% pre-market, a very steep drop. Additionally, Workday fell 10% and GoDaddy dropped 9%. HP, which I just mentioned, also had its earnings report. As for HP's earnings report, the stock dropped 5% because both its first quarter outlook and full year forecast fell short of expectations. So overall, there are still more companies rising today, especially in the tech sector, including those related to AI. Looking at the big picture, this should have a generally positive impact on the US stock indices. That's a summary of the individual gainers and losers. Now, about the Dow Jones Index. Still holding strong, very strong. Eric, you're welcome, Eric, you're welcome. Earlier, 32 gigabytes was $13,000. Wow, that's insanely expensive. 32 gigabytes is going to cost over $10,000? That's just a ridiculously high price. Man, if your 32 gigabytes RAM is going to break $10,000, I could already buy a brand new motherboard for that price. If you add in the CPU, it might only take about $10,000 to get it all set up. Back then, I'm talking about 3 years ago, when I built my PC 3 years ago, I was using an Intel i5. In the i5 era, the CPU plus the motherboard, I remember it only cost about $10,000 at that time. Just a little over $10,000 and you're good to go. The CPU and motherboard together could be done for around $10,000, and then if you add a power supply, some RAM, and then the case and all that other stuff, the PC I built 3 years ago, which was a pretty decent build, was an i5 office machine, and it ran fast enough for everything I needed. I used a Delta Electronics power supply and 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. Add it all up and it comes to about 16,000. Yeah, around 16,000. But looking at the current prices my classmates just mentioned, I think if you want to build a computer now, you probably can't get away with spending less than 30,000. It's gotten really expensive, especially Corning products. They're pricey. There's also fiber optics, and they have glass and all sorts of stuff like that. Especially, like I just mentioned, fiber materials, fiberglass cloth, for example. Besides fiber optics like Corning makes, I remember that for fiberglass cloth, what was that Japanese company's name? They make low decay fiberglass cloth, and prices have skyrocketed. Anything AI related is selling fast. The Dow is still strong, up 0.76% yesterday, staying above monthly and quarterly averages. What about the SOX index? It rose 1.45%, staying above the monthly moving average. As long as this rising wedge holds, there's no worry. Now, the Magnificent Seven tech giants have been weaker lately. They've been dropping, but only for about 2 months. The last 2 months were a healthy pullback after gains. The big tech index is at the 200-day average. If it holds this trend line, it's not a bear market yet. Let's talk about the big tech giants. They have really important business moats in their industries. These aren't things that just any AI company can easily replace. If you look at the companies in the big tech index, there's Google, Amazon, Apple, Tesla. A lot of these industries can't just be replaced by AI overnight. So they have their own competitive advantages. And in the future, when the index has gone up a lot and enters a phase of pullback or consolidation, or when some small cap stocks start to see profit taking at higher levels, it's likely that in the future it'll still be these 7 giants that hold up the market and serve as a confidence indicator for investors. So I think the giants, they've been weak lately, but it's just a pullback after a rally. They're still strong. The Dow and SOX index are stable and trending upward. This benefits Taiwan's markets, especially TSMC. If TSMC and Nvidia stay strong, the trend continues. AMD is relatively strong, and TSMC basically benefits across the board because TSMC is essentially a company that sells shovels. Any company working on AI or any kind of advanced chips all need to use TSMC's chips, processes, and technology. So TSMC basically covers it all. Oh, it covers everything. Great, thank you. As for the Japanese company Nido Boseki, is it good? Okay, thanks. There are a ton of things in the Taiwan stock market too, lots of supply chain companies, and the same goes for Japanese and US stocks. So if you're not sure what to buy, just buy Taiwan's 0050 ETF or TSMC. I think buying those will basically let you ride the wave and profit from the related gains. So that's all for the group's discussion today, bringing you the latest info before the US stock market opens. When class is over, remember to like, subscribe, and share for us. Lastly, I wish everyone smooth trading. See you tomorrow.
Our company has no improper financial interests in the individual securities recommended or analyzed. The information in this program is for reference only. Investors should make independent judgments, evaluate carefully, and bear their own investment risks. If you don't want to miss the latest market updates, be sure to turn on the notification bell and hit subscribe. In addition, we have plenty of great video content on both Facebook and YouTube. Don't miss out. In our group, we share in-depth explanations of global financial events with you every day.